I came to this project with an open mind. Didn't really know what I would find. Honestly, just prayed. Here I am, God. I've set the stage. My heart is open like a blank page, and I'm longing to hear what you have to say. Your people are thirsty, so lead the way to the water of life that they need today. I want to hear your spirit and not just speak from my head. And as I listened, this is what God said. Son, regarding this poverty thing, you've been misled. There's this misconception about poverty that it only belongs to the poor materially, but there's another poverty that's harder to see. The poverty of souls that affects every human and makes them sick. And according to Jesus, this poverty might even be worse among the materially rich. Now, before you stone me and shut off my mic, just listen for a minute and then judge for yourself if what I'm saying is wrong or right. The truth is that there's a poverty in the rich and also riches in the poor, and to be honest with you all, this truth has got me floored. And as I've meditated more and more, I'm convinced this is something that shouldn't be ignored. So as you have graciously given me the floor, allow me to expound on what I think God has in store. When I grew up, I had everything, thought that the whole world belonged to me. Do you know what that's called? Poverty. Not like you'd usually think because I had them Benjamins, but poverty in a deeper way within. My soul was coming unhinged. Pockets were fat, but my spirit was bankrupt, morally corrupt. Get in my face and you'd see me erupt. Explode on those close to me, really any authority. Couldn't hold a relationship, inept at intimacy. Lots of friends around, but deep inside lonely. Thought I was fine, but basically blind and unable to see that I wasn't rich. I was just a poor person with money. But let me tell you about some riches I see in the ghetto. They got courage, heart, and willingness to take a bullet for a friend. Or put one in you too, if they catch you talking trash about someone in their crew. I've honestly had trouble finding men like that since I came through that church door. Not sure anyone would have my back or take some shots for me if we were at war. Where are all the men who know how to fight and care about more than just being a nice guy showing up on Sunday and giving a few alms to the poor? Because if you haven't noticed, this is a war, and the church is in need of warriors to even up the score. Scores and scores of nice people getting decimated by the enemy of souls, lacking gospel power, lacking faith, and still getting dominated by sins of old. We need more men who are soldiers, willing to take a bullet. We need some fighters with their finger on a spiritual trigger and unafraid to pull it. We need men and women of power in the church in this day and hour. You can find them in the hood, they're just squandering it away. On themselves and on their own glory, on their set and on their own fame. But we get to offer them a place to fight in the kingdom for his name. No more shame, where people can walk who were once lame and get to burn with the holy flame while they do war against the real enemy and get a new name. So let's go find these generals and captains, men and women of conviction, soldiers willing to live on a small ration and begin a chain reaction that reverberates through the earth and leaves the host of hell fraction, scratching their temples wondering what in the world happened, while we smile with satisfaction and say that God chose the poor to be rich in faith and went to the hood to find men and women of action. There are drug dealers in the hood as gifted as any Wall Street CEO, making thousands a week before they're even old enough to vote. Whether in a gang or corporate America, it's the same skills that promote. Take note. Leadership, courage, influence, and passion. Goldman Sachs, Enron, white-collar assassins, white-collar thieves. Their leaders get off with a slap on the wrist or maybe a couple years in the pen, while the young brother in the street with a bag of weed gets 10. Or maybe life. And in that cell now as a permanent resident, while a sexist billionaire white supremacist becomes president. Let's dream, America, of what it could be like if the riches of the poor were out in plain sight. Let's dream, America, of what it would be like if the poverty of the rich was brought into the light. Will we all be a little more humble, a little less apt to fight over every petty difference that makes them wrong and us right? And maybe we could actually be wrong, not have to be strong, and instead of stepping on each other's heads up the corporate ladder, maybe help one another along. So what's the truth from heaven? Everyone is rich and everyone is poor. In different areas you see different scores. Scores of gifts make some people rich even though they can't afford a car. While the wealthy, gripped with fear, stay sequestered in the suburban ghettos, afraid to trust or let anyone near. Cars that can fly at top gear, new one purchased year after year, and all the fresh gear, but relationally bankrupt and unable to be close to anyone, even those they hold dear. So let's stop thinking people are different based on a few dollars and cents. Doesn't make any sense. In the end, we're all human. There's really no difference. All created with purpose, all given light within, all meant to shine for the glory of Him who created light in the beginning and will be our light in the end. Rich and poor all share the same space, part of a chosen race that chose disgrace to spit in His face and preferred the taste of forbidden fruit. Swallowed it whole and sin took root, never to let go until Jesus came and spoke truth. Through Jesus, God's doing a new thing on the earth, bringing together opposites and removing the division. It wasn't incisions that pierced His hand, but a cold metal stake representing the cold hearts of men. Broke His skin, caused Him to bleed. Drops of blood falling to the ground like seed that would grow into a tree, satisfying every need and providing the healing of nations in its leaves. And maybe in that we can find some unity. A simple humanity, all broken and needy, with the great God that came and is still with us pleading, "Come to me, all you who are weary. Throw your cares on my back, because my burden is light and my yoke is easy." Can I ease your poverty? and make you all one in spirit, so much power together that the enemy in hell will fear it, because I see one army, one nation of all different colors, rich and poor, all sisters and brothers, with their arms locked, radiant and bold, with the power of God ready to demolish strongholds. Have you been told this is impossible? Well, I have too, but in its simplest form, it begins with me and you. Will you surrender your culture, your prejudices, and unconscious bias to the ruler of your soul? Open your heart and just try this. Embrace your poverty so that you can be brought low. Pay attention to others. This life isn't meant to be your reality show. But also embrace your wealth. Take your gifts off the shelf and share them instead of just using them for yourself. And to you rich in this life, could you fight the enemy of greed and become open-handed to those you see in need? And to the poor in this life, don't you dare concede to the lie that you're less valuable, but instead believe that infinite worth lies within, and one day you'll see the righting of all that was wrong, the captives set free. And if you're one of those precious few who plan to move into the ghetto to minister to the poor, please do. I applaud you. But first take a look at your own poverty too. It's that pesky plank in your eye that can cloud your view. Do you think they're the ones that need the gospel? Well, that's true. But don't forget that the gospel also applies to you. Lest we become those that Jesus really hated, standing there in the marketplace, pointing our finger at the socially underrated, bringing attention to our long prayers and our flowing robes of righteousness. What a mess. Phylacteries hanging from our heads like a spotlight, shouting to everyone, look at me if you want to know how to act right. Surely they can see how righteous I am and will be drawn to God, but that's not how he planned it. It's in your poverty. It's in your brokenness that the gospel's proclaimed in a way that people understand it. But don't stop at your poverty. Look for their riches too, their gifts, their treasures, most of which you'll find buried under societal pressures. Yes, they're in the ghetto where God put them by his good pleasure, because every person, suburban or ghetto, has value as his image bearer. So don't forget the simple gospel for your own heart. He found you too poor and wretched and needy and gave you a fresh start. You're no different than those that you mean to serve. You're an object of mercy that got what you didn't deserve. You got an inheritance that was due to his son. He shared it with you to show you the kingdom to come. The richest of all time. King Jesus emptied his account and put a deposit in yours and mine. Chose poverty to make many rich, freely and happily gave of his inheritance, overcame every circumstance. Open-handed, really open-armed. He hung on the cross and in so doing reformed the entire economy of life. Bread for the hungry soul and water forever at no price to the taker. He paid it all, satisfied our maker, creator, judge. Moved the rock off the tomb, holding us in death that men couldn't budge. Expunged is the debt, never again to be paid by the very men who squandered it away. In its place remains his deposit, making each of us rich and as a composite, the richest nation on earth, with borders not marked by man but by the Spirit who gives rebirth. And with this abundance we're called to share so that the glory and mercy of our loving Father would be seen everywhere. So let's be a people with wide open hands and hearts that genuinely don't care if on the day of death we don't have anything left to share. Who think less about retirement or a 401k yield and more about people coming to know the King, and a tombstone that reveals an inscription that can genuinely say, left it all on the field. Amen. For real.